Welcome everyone, I'm Vic, and thank you for joining us on Unsheathed Sword Reviews. Today we're going to review a Danish axe from Darksword Armory.
Before we get to that though, I want to list some disclosures about us. We are not sword experts, we are not muscle-powered weapon experts, because as you can see this is not a sword in front of us. But we are muscle-powered weapon enthusiasts. If you want to spend $1,500 on a sword, we'd like to have some swords to tell you about. If you want to spend $200 on a sword, we want to help you spend your hard-earned money in the best way you possibly can. So with that said, Vic, what is this?
So first of all, this is utterly badass. I realize that looks are subjective, but this thing looks amazing. But yes, so this is not a sword. This is a badass, very large looking Danish axe. So this is from Darksword Armory. I realize like that name might give you a sense of dread. It might give you a sense of joy. They are a very controversial maker. And we'll talk about that perhaps a little bit later. But this is a very, very large two-handed axe that was used in the early Middle Ages, aka the Dark Ages. And so kind of the neat thing about this, and one of the things Darksword does well sometimes, is they will take a historical idea and then put kind of a fantasy spin on it. And in this particular instance, I think it looks utterly badass. I think it looks really, really cool. And I think Darksword kind of, in terms of aesthetics, hit it out of the park with this. So that's what this is. This is a two-handed Danish axe from the early Middle Ages, made by Darksword Armory. Mm-hmm. So in terms of the aesthetics, I think they nailed it. What do you think about that, John? And like, what do you think of the fit and finish of this overall?
I completely agree with you. Darksword did not set out to make a historically accurate Danish axe with this, which is good because it's not that. But I do think that it looks absolutely fantastic. In terms of the overall aesthetic, I think the most thing you'll notice immediately is these crisscross leather lacings on the handle, which look absolutely fantastic. So I think hanging on the wall, it's hard to imagine an axe looking better than this one does to me. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. Now, in terms of handling and all that sort of stuff, we can get more about that later. But in terms of how it looks, I think Darksword, again, nailed it. They hit it out of the park. This is a great looking fantasy Danish axe. It just looks fantastic.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah. And the crisscross leather work that it has, in handling, none of that has come loose, which is, I think, would be a concern you would have for something like this.
Definitely.
Everything is still very, very tight. And all of that also helps kind of keep it in your hand well. Like that helps.
Retention,
for that. And another big way that this is kind of ahistorical is the axe head itself.
Yeah.
That kind of downward slope that it has, that's really not an axe head that I've seen on any kind of charts. That said, as we talked about in disclaimers, we're not sword experts. We're really not axe experts.
Even less axe experts, for sure.
So, again, we're more just...
I'll drink to that.
Yeah, cheers. We're more just talking to you as consumers of products. And so, but just so you know, ahistorical. But that said, I think the leather pattern... and the slightly fantasy axe head, again, adds to the fact that it looks really, really cool.
It definitely does.
It will look great on your wall and all that. I think it does have a little bit of a rougher aesthetic to it, but I feel like with this specific axe, it very much works. Obviously, the wood, it's real wood, so there's going to be inconsistencies and like the color and stuff like that, but overall, I think it looks good. I think the rough finish parts of it are going to be on any kind of axe, any kind of handmade item that you would get. Its closest competitor that we can find is a Danish axe from Arms and Armor, and I've seen reviews on that. There's one from Skalagram that kind of have the same little imperfections and like scuffs and stuff on the blade. So I feel like that's probably par for the course. So that's just what I think. What do you think?
I agree with you completely. I think this should look a little rougher. And again, our aesthetic tastes tend to vary. He likes things more polished looking. I like them less so. But I think for this particular item, this is what I want it to look like. I mean, there's hammer marks in the blade. It looks like an axe, and I really like that about it. So yeah, I have no complaints about the fit and finish.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense because, like, real quick thing about the historical context of what an axe like this would have been used for. Axes were a little bit cheaper to have back in the day. So as such, especially early Middle Ages, swords were more expensive than they were in the high Middle Ages. So not as many people had an actual sword. So axes were kind of a go-to, less steel, cheaper to produce, right?
Particularly in mineral poor countries like Scandinavia was a lot of the reason they were doing as much raiding as they were, right? So yeah, I mean, it makes all the sense in the world how they made them, and this looks like how I would want it to look, right? Plus the fantasy elements, which are just fun.
And for me, the guy as the prissy one who appreciates a finer aesthetic, the rougher look with the fantasy elements, to me, put it over the top, and I feel like it looks amazing to me. So awesome. I think this is a great looking axe. So that said, though, it's very fun to swing around, isn't it, John?
It really is. Yeah, I think it handles pretty well. axes are different to swing than swords, and we are not great at either. So there's that. But I would say, I think there are some issues that I have with this axe that transcend my ineptitude, if you want to put it that way. I think number one, I don't like how the leather on the handle makes it handle. I find like a lot of times I want to slide my hands or switch my grip, and it's harder to do that. Like particularly when swinging, it might be nice to be able to bring my hands together, and I can't do that because I hit the microphone, but it's to make it so it makes it so it's harder to slide your hand on the shaft. And actually, one time I remember watching an episode of Forged in Fire, and the judges had the same complaint about an axe handle that somebody made, was that for changing hand position, the leather makes it rough. But other than, and also the other complaint I have is it could be sharper. It probably and again, I'd say that people that are better at axes than we are would do better with this axe than we did, but I think probably should be sharper for anybody. Right. So those are my two complaints about the handling, but otherwise I think it's gorgeous.
Yeah, so I didn't really notice a problem with the leather affecting how it felt to me, but that's definitely a thing. One thing that I noticed was just the shape of the wooden haft itself. Like toward the top, it's wider and more rectangular, and then it kind of, as it transitions down, gets rounder and thinner.
A little tougher for indexing, maybe.
Yeah, and so for me, again, I'm not good at indexing anyway because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But I noticed when I was trying to cut single water bottles, every time I've used this axe, I keep knocking them around. And I was watching slow-mo footage of myself cutting with this before filming this to try to figure that out. And I realized as I get to the bottom, I start to curve it up. And again, that's 100% on me. I just don't think this particular axe was doing me any favors in that regard. But again, if you know what you're doing, you would probably be able to mitigate that. But again, as you said, it's not very sharp. And it's about Darksword sharp, maybe a little less than that, because I think out the box, both my Darksword pieces were sharper than this.
It feels like dull axe sharp to me. Because axe sharp's different than sword sharp. Obviously, the edge profile is different and all that sort of stuff. But this doesn't feel quite sharp enough to be a weaponized axe. It feels like a wood axe to me. That's how sharp it is.
So, but if you did give this a quick go around on a work sharp or something, that would change it dramatically.
Completely
I think
agree. Definitely, completely agree.
Also, Darksword Armory doesn't actually list what the HRC is for this particular steel, and we kind of theorize that it's on the higher end, probably flirting with 60, because there's actually a chip.
Notch,
right on the edge of it, and no abusive testing has been done with this. We've only cut water bottles and other pumpkins and soft stuff like that.
I think we nicked the stand once. But
even that I don't think should chip the edge.
No, definitely not.
So it's probably, or maybe like you said, an improper heat treat in that particular area. Yep. But that's a thing to consider, that, stuff like that will happen. But again, a quick rundown on sharpening, and that would totally,
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, overall, it's actually really, really fun to swing around. It is a little forward heavy like axes are, but at 3.9 pounds, it actually, when you pick it up and hold it, it feels like a lot lighter than you
I
think,
agree.
right?
It's pretty lively. It moves pretty well. So yeah, I really like it a lot. So what do you think about overall value? Everything, we said in consideration.
So here's the deal. One thing to think about that we haven't mentioned yet is the overall price. This is $325 US plus shipping. Now, in terms of sword money, that's well in the budget range, maybe starting to flirt with mid-range, starting to get there. But that's, in terms of, this market and the sword market, that's not a whole lot of money. In terms of close competitors, this is a pretty unique piece. There are a few from Arms and Armor, and those are about $370, and those are more historically accurate.
Right.
So
they lean more towards functionality than aesthetic.
Right. And if that's what you want, that's dope, and go with that. But if you actually like this aesthetic, you're going to undercut those prices just a wee bit. Mm-hmm. That said, for me, the aesthetics are great. The handling, while, not my thing that I know how to use, I think it's really, really fun to swing around. I think you feel like another badass while you're playing with this, and that's really what we all want, isn't it?
Absolutely.
$325, I think that is a very, very good deal, and I completely recommend it. I think it's dope. I think it's a unique piece. If you're a sword collector and you want something that's a little bit different, I promise you, if this is hanging on your wall, this will draw questions from whoever is looking at your collection. So I completely recommend. I think it's worth the money. I think everything taken into account, really can't beat that price. What do you think?
I completely agree, and I think especially, just what Vic said, to sort of accentuate the rest of your sword collection, it's different, it's striking, it's interesting looking, it's fun to play with. I mean, really, for under $400, under $350, it's pretty it's buy for me, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100% agree. Because
Yeah.
comparable fit and finish and handling on a sword for this price range, I would really be
6 something.
Yeah, I would.
high fives.
If you found something like that for $325, I'd be like, buy it right now.
Buy it right now.
So
Just
yeah,
yep, that's good.
So-
That's a good way to put it.
yeah. So 100%, both of
Yeah.
us agree. Get it. Obviously, disclaimer: this is Scott's axe. And so obviously he really, really likes it. He thinks it's fun to use, and Scott may well be a Viking, so this was a fitting object for him to have and to wield. So
It's true. It's also worth noting that we have sort of a tradition of buying each other sharp birthday presents, and this was one of the first sharp birthday presents. There was this, and there was that katana.
it was the first
Yep,
one, yeah. So
yep.
you bought Scott this, and you got me the katana,
Yep.
which is off frame. I'll put a picture of it here.
It's off frame.
But that said, yeah, that started our tradition of buying
Exactly.
each other sharp things, and
Which indirectly led to on-sheet sword reviews.
It
so
did.
for better or for worse, here we are.
so this is one of the founding fathers of
Exactly,
sword reviews.
exactly,
So
yep.
yeah, so I'm happy we got to review it and check it out.
And tell us what you think about axes in the comments in general. And if you want to see more stuff that's not swords, we each have a couple of maces and things like that we could bring around.
Yeah, I have a one-handed axe,
Yeah.
and there's other stuff that we could start busting out. So if you're interested, like you said,
Let us know.
Yeah,
Let us know,
for sure.
definitely.
Definitely. And thank you for joining us on this video. If you enjoyed, please give us a thumbs up. That really helps us out with the algorithm.
Right.
Subscribe to this channel and stay tuned. What are we doing next, John?
Oh, next we're going to do that contest announcement, aren't we?
We are going to do the contest announcement next. So if you saw the little unboxing video that we did before this for the Vision Ansbach, we mentioned a contest that was coming up. Stay tuned, because following this video, we will give you full details and a little mini review on the sword that we are going to be giving away. Exciting times on Unsheathed Sword Reviews.
Just so.
All right. Thank you for joining us, guys.
Peace.